Good morning and welcome to Tree Talk episode 160 part 2. I'm delighted to be joined again by Matt O'Callaghan as we look forward to this weekend's action. Yesterday's podcast, we were looking back on all the county hurling finals we have. So if anyone wants to listen to that first, go over to the website or any of our social channels on Sport and Limerick to watch that. But today, Matt, we'll be focusing on a load of action. We have 4 county football finals. We have a pair of Junior A semi-finals, we have Camogie semi-finals, and we have the start of the Junior B knockout stages. So do stay tuned for all that and more.
The impression the game you get out with what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well, Shawnee Buckley to do that to Tomas O'Shea. He deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
Matt, we have so much to get through, so we'll fire straight into it. We'll start with the Senior Football Championship final between Adair and Newcastle. And I suppose, to be honest, at the start of the year, if you said those teams could avoid each other till the final, they'd get all the way. They are the best teams in Limerick, and there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I think very few could argue with that, Jack. Right from the start, you know, the belief was, and all forecasting and punditry was of the opinion that, as you said, if they avoided each other, that these two would meet in the county final, and this is what we've got now. All right, Dare seemed to get through that little bit easier than Newcastle West. I think, as we've been well documented and as we've said in this cast before, that Newcastle West were slow starters. There wasn't a doubt about that. They lost the league final, and I don't want to be harping back on it again. They had, by their standards, a very poor performance, I thought, in the first round against Galway. But it seemed to take off when they met Father Casey's, and I suppose there was nothing better to focus the minds of the Newcastle Westmen than a game with Father Casey's and the bragging rights that go with it in the West Division. So their campaign seemed to take off from there now. I saw him in the quarter-final against Claghon, and I have to say, Jack, I was hugely impressed by him. I couldn't believe the transformation that was in him. Although their manager Jimmy Lee had pointed out to me earlier well before that game, even in the aftermath of the Galway game, you know, that they conceding that they were starting slowly, and of course, as he pointed out to both you and me during the last week, that you know, there was a period, a settling in period with a new management team himself, and what you'd have to say, Jack, is a very, very impressive and formidable looking backroom team. Like, he has his brother Joe on the backroom team, along with Declan Bruder and Stephen Kelly. That, by any standards, Jack, is a very, very high-powered team. And obviously, I think that Newcastle West, in terms of timing it, have probably got it absolutely spot on. You probably say that all right, they only beat Monaleen by a point. I've been saying from the start of this year, if the duopoly of Newcastle West and Adair was to be broken, that Monaleen were the team to do it. Because I was hugely impressed by Monaleen. Absolutely. Monaleen are a team that are going very, 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 very much on an upward trajectory and very, very much in the right direction. And they got over them in the semi-final. Now, Adair were Adair, like you know, they won a fantastic county championship last year, and one of the disappointments I had about Adair last year is that they didn't get a chance to benchmark themselves in the Munster Clubs Championship. Now they got over Napiershik and Ula in the group stages, and Jack, you would have to say it was routine. It was just routine victories, as expected. Just went in, got on with the job, and away you go. Then they experienced a bit of turbulence against your own Ballysteen.
Yeah,
they certainly hadn't did all their own way, and I sometimes wonder. There was a very strong wind that day, as you know. Adair had it in the first half. Now, if there was a roles reversal in that, and that Ballysteen had it in the first half and built a lead, it would have certainly made for an interesting game. Now, Ballysteen, when they came back into the game, it was a bit late. Now they closed the gap eventually to 4 points. You know, but certainly that was probably the toughest game that they got. Now, obviously, Galtee Gales certainly tested them in the first quarter, and in the second quarter, Adair got a run on the Gales. And had built up, was it a 6-point lead at halftime, something like 10 points to 4?
Yeah.
And of course, then the Gales got a goal, you know, but that seemed, rather than being the catalyst for the Gales driving on, it seemed to provide the Adair with the wake-up call and the spur for them to drive on. And they ran out maybe slightly flattering winners, 18 points to 1-6. So that basically charts how both teams have got here.
Yeah, and again, no surprise that they're here. I mean, you look at the squads, the talent pool among both of them, but I think it's fair to say, Matt, that strength and depth, you have to side with Newcastle. Now, starting 15s, it could go either way, but the strength and depth of Newcastle is shown by the fact they have a Premier Junior final on Sunday. We look forward to that in due course, but the squad Newcastle have is extraordinary.
It's absolutely extraordinary, and it's an absolutely fantastic squad. Like, and I have said, you know, for the last 4 or 5 or 6 years, that if you sit down at the start of the year and you make a judgment on who are likely county champions based on the respective squads of the team, it's Newcastle West all day. They have an absolutely fantastic squad, and Newcastle West have got a huge boost this year, particularly in recent games, with the form of Cian Sheehan. He's been abroad and he's been dogged with injuries for the last couple of years, but Cian Sheehan is back at his very best, and at the best at the level that we know he aspires to and that he can achieve. And like he's a huge player for him. And actually, if you see back through the year, through the campaign, his involvement in making scores and getting scores has been a huge factor. But if you look at them, you know, Michael O'Keefe, Darren O'Doherty in the full back line, both played inter-county. Stephen Brosnan has played underage with Limerick. Sheehan and Ian Corbett, notionally named at midfield. Now they move all over the place, but what a powerful duo if they line out at midfield. And then you've got big Mike McMahon, of course, on the edge of the square, the target man, and the hurleys, and we know what they bring to the table. But Jack, if you look at their bench, and this is what we have been saying. If you look at their bench, this is their bench in the semi-final, and I have it here. Michael Quilligan, Brian Nix, Seamus Hurley, Donica Woods, Lee Foley, Brian Foley, Thomas Quilligan, Dermot Kelly. Players that would be on any first team, Jack.
Yeah, I know. I think a couple of those players may have started. I think Dermot Kelly started from the start, but that also means someone.
Yeah, and then you have others like Chris Neville, Niall McAuliffe, Ryan Sheehan. You know, it's a mind-boggling, you know.
It's an embarrassment of riches that Newcastle have, but then on the other side, Adair, while their bench isn't probably as strong, like they do have the Burke brothers who have been so consistent in this entire run. The 3 Connollys, the 2 Lyonses, Shane Doherty's been there since the start. Jack English, like the names are off the tongue for there, really.
They do Aidan O'Connor, Brendan Carmody, who's been there quite a bit. Shane Costello, who's stepping up to the plate this year. You know, Paul Maher, don't forget him, and you know, his contribution to Limerick. You know, yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. But now, in the semi-final, Jack English was on the bench, and a real game changer that might be on the bench, or maybe he will be starting on Friday, is Mikey Lyons.
Yeah, he was injured against us. Right, I know he was struggling with injury all year, but Mikey's one of the best footballers in Limerick. Just so clever.
Without a question, you know, it's a stage that's set up for Mikey, because we saw the performance that he turned on in the county final last year, which was just simply phenomenal. Now, I don't know whether he'll be starting or not, but Harry Gleeson and his high-powered management team as well. Like, you must remember, Killian Fair is in there, Anthony Maher is in there, Joe Reddington is in there. But they will be happy when they look to their bench if Mikey Lyons is sitting on it, if they need to call for reinforcements at any stage during the game. You know, it's some sub to have, and like he's been through it all with Adair, and has done his stint with Limerick. Like he has 3 county senior medals. He's an intermediate medal, and he'll forgive me for saying he doesn't have an under-21 medal, because he was slightly overage at that stage when they won it in 2015 and 2017. So. But yeah, you know, it's all set up for an absolutely fantastic final. But Jack, I see parallels between the football final and the hurling final, and you see the huge names, particularly the Burke brothers, and what they bring, and they would equate to me like the threat that Dermot Burns, Cian Lynch, and Aaron Gillan would pose for Patrick's well in the hurling final. But you know, for the reasons that I've said, you look at the Ian Corbetts, you look at the Cian Sheehan's, the Darren O'Doherty, and we haven't mentioned Jamesy Kelly at all, who has settled in there at centre back and is doing a fine job there for Newcastle West. And the hurley's AJ O'Connor. It's delicately poised, Jack.
Yeah,
but you know, I see parallels between both finals.
Yeah, and I suppose I'll touch on predictions as well, Matt. But the venue, the Gaelic grounds, really expensive ground, and you could see that with Mungo St. Paul's the other day. They really flourished there. It'll probably suit Adair that bit more, who are probably more of a kicking team, whereas Newcastle are very direct. But can do it both ways, but probably more favour towards Adair.
Yeah, because you know, if there's one thing about Adair, this has been a characteristic of Adair since they made the breakthrough, and since their breakthrough year, and it's something that impresses me, and it's something that doesn't seem to change. They play the 4 corners, and by that I mean they play every blade of grass on the pitch. They use the pitch to the full, and the Gaelic grounds is certainly conducive to the type of game they play. There's any. I don't think there's any issue there, Jack. It definitely suits them. It's probably a slight advantage to them, as you say, coming into the final.
Yeah, and the last time they met in the Gaelic grounds was obviously the 2017 final. Adair, I was shocked Adair on that day. Like, it was hard to see a team coming up intermediate to win it, but Adair did just that. But then Newcastle won in 19 and Adair won last year. So the way things are going, it looks like it's going to be Newcastle. And I won't get your prediction now, but Newcastle will definitely be going in for revenge.
Newcastle West haven't fully exorcised the ghosts of 2017, which is ominous.
Yeah, it is very ominous. I think we might leave it there for a while, man. We'll come back to later on when we do predictions. But today is Thursday, if you're watching it live or if you're watching it on. The intermediate football championship final is on tonight in McNeville at 7:30 between Kildare Palace Kenry and Rathkeale. And while we were saying you would have expected Adair and Newcastle to come through, probably wouldn't have been looking at these two teams maybe to go a share of the way, but you wouldn't have expected this final, Matt.
No, I certainly wouldn't have expected this final. I wouldn't. I would not. You know, if you look at their record in recent years, Kildimo Pallaskenry came up in 2018 as junior champions. They beat Cappamore in the final in Newcastle West, and certainly hadn't until now taken the intermediate championship by storm. They just hung in there the first year. The last year they got into the quarterfinals, and but Rathkeale, maybe if you would you would more than likely expect maybe that Rathkeale would have a pot at getting to the final. It's not too long since they were in the final, 2018, when they lost it to Gelbley in a very low scoring final. I think was it 1-5 to 7 points. A heartbreaking defeat, and as you heard Jack Hennessy, their captain, telling us there in the week that you know it's a place that they don't want to be in again in a losing dressing room on county final day. But having said that, there can be no arguments, Jack, about there being in the final. And I know we differed slightly in our predictions at the semi-final stage, where you were convinced that Kildimo Pallaskenry would come through St. Senans. I wasn't. At the semi-final stage, I predicted a St. Senans Gerald Griffin's final, because I felt that maybe Senans, with the experience that they have, they're not too long down. It's just their second year back down as at intermediate level. That, you know, the experience and the like of Ian Ryan and all those would probably have too much for Kildimo Pallaskenry. And I felt that Gerald Griffin's, after losing for the last 2 years, you know, that they certainly would have the motivation to get back to a third final and try and eventually to get over the line. But that's water under the bridge now, Jack, because both of those predictions were wrong. Kildimo Pallaskenry and Rathkeale are there, and it has all the promise of an intriguing final this evening. I just hope that the inclement weather that we have had over the last 24 hours or so, that by then it would have cleared. But like, there are two exciting sides. I haven't seen Kildimo Pallaskenry. You have the advantage on me there, but I have seen Rathkeale, and I was hugely impressed with them, and in the manner in which they played against Drumbradford. Now, they literally throttled Drumbradford in the first half, but the one reservation I had, particularly going into the semi-final about them, was, and they nailed that one, was that, you know, they didn't reflect their superiority on the field, on the scoreboard. And like they beat Drumbradford by 3 points, but it was an extremely comfortable 3 points victory, if there is such a thing. It hardly ever looked in doubt right from the get-go in that game. But yeah, they're a very competent side, and if you look through their side, they won the championship in 2013. They're absolutely fantastic display in Bruff against Oola in the county final. It was a display for the ages, Jack, one that sticks very, very much in my memory. And you can see that players still around from that. Keith Hartland is still around. Gary Enright is still around. Dean Maughan, Owen O'Donnell. That's a huge wealth of experience to have. Plus, they have, as Jack Hennessy pointed out to us, you know, they have a core of players who were around in 2018 and who have the bitter experience of losing a county final, something that they don't want again. So that's going to be a huge motivating factor for Abbey, or for Rathkeale. Now, take Kildimo Pallaskenry, and like you'd have to say John Chalk and Ollie Coffey and the management team, they're doing an absolutely fantastic job. You know, and like they certainly haven't. They certainly have come from nowhere. let's say, because I don't think you could ask 100 people before the championship started to name who would be the likely finalists, and I don't think they would feature in any conversation or discourse. But they're there, and they're there on merit. And like you know, the record through it now, the great win over Drum in the first round, which was the ideal start. And I suppose on hindsight, if you look back, they lost their second round game to last year's junior A champions, Cracora Manister, which served as a very, very, very useful wake up call, and did not derail their passage to the quarterfinals. And like, you know, they got nothing easy in the knockout stages of the competition, because there you had first they had Mungret. Like when we were discussing this at the beginning of the year before there was a ball kicked in it, like Mungret were high, well up there as being potential champions. They got over that, and then they got over St. Senans. Like, it certainly hasn't been an easy passage for Kildimo Pallaskenry. And excuse me, Jack, but what makes it probably all the more credible, their performance of being where they are on this evening, is like right through the summer, they had to juggle commitments to both hurling and football, because there is quite a bit of a carryover. For instance, Tony McCarthy, Connor Staff, Cahill Downs, you know, Darren O'Connell, Peter Nash, all these guys, you know, were playing hurling. But once the hurling championship was over, and they had picked up silverware, which in itself was a boost in the shape of the county cup, that they were able to have a clear run in the preparation for the concluding stages of the championship. So I think Kildimo Pallaskenry are in a good place going into the final.
Yeah, I obviously saw him in the semi-final against St. Senans, and I was very impressed with the overall squad, because the hurlers you mentioned there played their part most definitely, but the kind of non-hurlers, I know they probably played junior, but likes of Brian Howard and Massey Sheehan in the fullback line were very impressive, as was Liam O'Sullivan at wing back and Darrow Deegan at wing forward. Like, I played him in soccer for a good few years. Just very strong athlete and equally adept footballer. So they're strong all over the field, Matt. And like, for Kildimo Pallaskenry, it's a 5th county final since 2017 across both codes. Obviously 17 intermediate hurling, 18 junior A football, 19 and 20 Premier Intermediate, 2020. Well, if you count the County Cup final, it'll be a 6th final. But like, a club on the rise, like, and they're showing that it can be done, because they probably wouldn't have a huge catchment area, but they could be only the 2nd team to go dual senior with Napiershig and Monaleen dropping down. So it'll be a huge achievement for that club.
Absolutely a massive achievement. And if you throw into the mix, as far as I know, they're already through to the under-19 A hurling final as well this year. So like, it's upwardly mobile for Kildimo Pallaskenry, certainly. And as I said, Jack, I feel they're in a good place going into the final, and we'll be coming to the predictions in later on. But certainly, the whole thing is primed, Jack, for a great final this evening.
It definitely is, and both teams are on the crest of a wave, obviously winning their quarterfinals and semi-finals. I probably weren't expected to win them semi-finals, but as you said, we'll get to them in a while. Another county final, well, I suppose the Premier Junior final is on Sunday. Newcastle West versus Abbeyfield.
It's actually on Saturday in Tournafull at 3 o'clock.
Oh, sorry, I have my dates wrong, so I thought it was Sunday. But 2 West sides, 2 2nd teams, Matt. And it probably says more for them as clubs than the other teams in the competition. We obviously went through Newcastle already, but Abbeyfield have picked up so much silverware at minor and 21s level. It's no surprise to see the 2 of them there. It's probably a small surprise to see the likes of Croom and Attain, Mount Collins and these sides not make it, but certainly the West is awake with them 2 teams.
It certainly is, and it promises to be an absolutely massive final. because as you rightly said, Father Casey's, Father Casey's are something that every year we wonder and we wonder and we wonder. When are they finally going to make the breakthrough? When are the successive crops of very good underage players that they have eventually going to gel together and translate underage success into success at senior level? But it is no surprise that these two teams are in the final, because we spoke about the strength in reserve of Newcastle West earlier on, and you could say the same for Father Casey's. And I suppose Father Casey's, if you turn the clock back a month, they had a slight advantage in that when they were eliminated from the senior championship, they were not going to burn any more of their junior players, and whilst Newcastle West would still be drawing on their junior squad. But if you look at Father Casey's, like you've the like of Sean Scannell in goal, you've Seamus Linehan, Sean Hartnett, Jamie O'Connor, Cathal Broderick, Billy Quirk, all vastly experienced ex-senior players, and then you have the younger crop like the Cathal Hartnetts, the Sam Quigleys of this world, bedding in. So in terms of mix of youth and experience, which is a cliche, this is as near as perfect that you will get to it. Turn over to the Newcastle West team, and of course, like you've Stephen Kelly in there. Fantastic, and we know what Stephen Kelly has done and continues to do. You have the Foleys in there, Brian Foley and Colin Foley. You have Sean Ivis, Rudon O'Connor, Tommy Quilligan is on the junior team if he's not burned in the county final. What a player to have on your junior team. And then they have the younger players coming through as well. So like it really is set up, and I suppose there are junior clubs around this county will be that are exclusively junior clubs. We will be disappointed that it is two second sides that have reached the final. But I don't think there can be few arguments about it. Now, Newcastle West were certainly the more convincing winners in the semi-finals. They had a very comprehensive win over Mount Collins, whilst Father Casey's needed a late goal to beat Croom. But I was of the opinion right from the start of this championship, as you know, Jack, that Croom would have been my favourites for it. So, it was a fair hurdle for Father Casey's to get over in the semi-final.
Yeah, it was, and sometimes having a harder semi-final can benefit the team more than a team that are comfortable. But again, we'll get to this game more later on, Stephen, and it'll be very interesting to see how Friday night's game affects Sunday's game or Saturday's game. Excuse me, because there'll be obviously momentum if Newcastle win, but if they lose the senior final, it could have a drip down effect, but that remains to be seen. And also on Saturday, we have the Junior A.
But before we go away from the Premier Junior A junior football, there was a very interesting game in Mount Collins last Friday evening, when Mount Collins, because of the rules governing entry into the Munster Clubs Championships, second teams like Father Casey's and Newcastle West are precluded from going forward representing their county. So it meant that there had to be a playoff between Mount Collins and Croom, the beaten semi-finalists, for the right to go on and represent Limerick in the Munster Clubs Junior Championship. And Mount Collins got over Croom by 9 points to 8 in a very, very interesting and obviously a very nail-biting game. So best of luck to Mount Collins. They go forward and they will be representing Limerick in the Munster Clubs Junior Football Championship in the first week in December.
Yeah, and best of luck to all teams that get there eventually. We'll be touching on more when we get close to time, because there is that kind of gap between them. Also on Saturday, we have the Junior Junior A or Junior final between Fine Kilmeedy, and they're going up against, I have to losing in my mind there, Fine Kilmeedy versus Camogie Rovers. Sorry, Camogie Rovers overcame Ballybrick and Bormore in their semi-final. That's on Saturday at 2 o'clock in Croom. I suppose for Fine Kilmeedy, they've definitely been boosted, and you mentioned in the previous pods in recent years, by the return of the Drumbrodford contingent. But Camogie Rovers have been building nicely over the last few years, Matt, as well. It's an interesting game, and it shows the importance of having a Premier Junior and a normal Junior A championship, because there's been very few kind of heavy margins that we saw last year.
Yeah, there's no doubt it has been a success. But just to put it into context, as you know, there was a carryover in the Junior B Football Championship from 2020, which was only finished earlier on this year. And certainly Fine Kilmeedy and Camogie Rovers would have one thing in common, in that they both lost their respective divisional Junior B 2020 Junior B finals. Fine Kilmeedy lost to Adair, and Camogie Rovers lost to Bannog. So it's a huge turnaround for both of them to be contesting a Junior A final. But again, I suppose you couldn't argue with the merit of their being there. Now, neither of them, by my records anyway, have ever won the Junior A championship before. So there's going to be a new name on the Limerick Junior A Championship Roll of Honour, which in itself is novel, and it's a good thing. Now, Fine Kilmeedy in recent years have won the Junior B. They won it in 2003. They won it again in 2013. But after a couple of years at Junior A, I think it was about 2 years, Fine Kilmeedy did not field the football team. And that led to the exodus of the O'Gormans, Sean Murray, Daniel Gare, Brian Hannigan, to senior pastures with Drumbrodford. And now that they're back, that Fine Kilmeedy have re-entered the competition since last year, and what a boost to have fellas that have that kind of experience coming into your junior team. But they're also boosted by the fact that they have also got Patrick Donnelly from Drumbrodford, who's living in that area for quite some time and transferred his allegiance from Drumbrodford. And the wealth of experience that Patrick Donnelly brings to this Fine Kilmeedy side is absolutely phenomenal. We saw the type of leadership he provided with Drumbrodford, and is now doing so with Fine Kilmeedy. Now, if you switch over briefly to Camogie Rovers, I think their semi-final victory was notable, in that they beat Ballybrick and Bohermore, who I would have had as favourites to win the competition right from the outset. And I think that was a significant. It was a significant victory on their part. Like Willie Coffey is the manager there, and with Niall Rainsford and Gary McCarthy, they've done an excellent job. And I was speaking with a couple of them earlier in the year when they were involved in the carryover of the Junior B football from last year, and you know, even though they lost the Junior B football final to Bannog, there was a spring in their step, and they were really looking forward to the A Championship this year, and they had reason to look forward to it, in that they had a couple of players who were ineligible for the Junior B last year, but had transferred their allegiance to him this year. And the most notable was Andrew O'Neill, the former Limerick footballer and former Bruff footballer, who returned to Camogie Rovers, to his native Camogie Rovers. Of course, Camogie Rovers, Jack, are drawn from Mianus Bruff. It's Mianus is Bruff and Mianus is the one parish. So players have a certain liberty to interchange there, and you've the like of Timmy O'Sullivan and James Meany, Dean Madden, who all did it with Bruff. You have Mikey O'Donnell, you have Anthony Nealon, who went from Camogie to Bruff and back to Camogie again. You see, it's quite legitimately that it's the very same as Patrickswell and Ballybrown. All the one parish. So I suppose it's a very creditable performance on their part to be there.
Yeah, and I'll get your predictions in a while, and we'll talk more about all those finals. But we'll move on for the time being, Matt. And this weekend we're down to the semi-finals in the senior, intermediate, and junior Camogie championships, and it's just been so helter-skelter with all the sports. Probably haven't given enough time to these games. But we'll start with the senior semi-finals. Two mouthwatering games: Ahan versus Killeedy in Killeedy at 11:30, and Newcastle West versus Granite Ballingarry in Newcastle West at the same time. Starting with Ahan versus Killeedy. Killeedy are defending champions, but probably haven't rooted up trees this year. They just scraped by Granite Ballingarry and the same in the Pierce League. But as champions, they've shown their ability to win games. But Ahan have then, conversely, have responded very well from a loss to Newcastle West with back-to-back wins. So it's kind of two teams kind of coming in at different angles, but it should be a cracking game, Matt.
It should, and like, you know, you'd have to suspect that Killeedy just got the job done during the group stages, and are keeping the best wine to last. I think it's a different Killeedy that we will see in the semi-final on Sunday, because certainly they haven't rooted up trees, as you said, certainly not. But they are champions. They're in the semi-final. As such, there hasn't been a glove laid on them in the group stages. They're coming in with full points, and I suppose it's a very, very good sign of a team that if you're playing below par, or, that's the wrong word, playing below your best, let's say, and that you can still attain your goal, then you're in a very, very good place. You're right about Ahan. Ahan are going to be tricky. They're going to be very tricky, because you have you know, it's not too long ago since they were champions in 2018, if I'm right, Jack.
Yeah.
So like, they would have a carryover of a lot of players who would know about winning these big games. Now, they did suffer, you know, at the outset. It looked to be, from a hand point of view, an alarmingly convincing defeat to Newcastle West in the first round. But they bounced back then and had good wins over Cora and Bruff, and sealed their place in the semi-finals quite convincingly. But looking at it, you would really have to favour. You'd have to favour Killeedy with the firepower they have. If you look at the experience they have, if you look at the players that they have with Limerick and Jack, and we noted it during the inter-county Camogie season this year. If you recall, the impact that the Killeedy players had made with both Limerick senior and junior team, which was phenomenal. Like, like you've the Cunninghams, absolutely. You know, you've Alana Mulcahy, of course. Anya Cunningham was probably, you know, the find of the year as far as the Limerick senior team was concerned. You've Karen Milan, you've Lisa Scanlon, you know. There are players that and of course you have the Shanahans, Valerie, who scored literally for fun in the junior championship and in the junior league with Limerick. So like they are a very formidable outfit, and maybe they weren't hitting the high spots during the group stages, but like, if you look at the team list, it's simply phenomenal, Jack, what the amount of talent that they have at their disposal.
Yeah.
Now Judith Mulcahy will probably lead the resistance from a hand. You'll have Anya Reynolds, Kate Herbert, Anne Kennedy, Shauna Darcy. Like, all top class players, you know, to lead the charge. It makes for a very interesting semi-final. Are you doing this in the predictions, Jack, or do we predict now?
We'll fire these into predictions altogether.
Okay.
So I'll hold you for a while yet before you give your predictions. The other game,
You probably know how I'm leaning anyway.
Yeah.
You're good at second guessing that, Jack.
I suppose looking at the 4 teams left, as it kind of mirrors the senior hurling championship, the men's side, but like you have the current champions, Killeedy, last year, 19 winners, Newcastle West, 18 winners a hand, and then you have the 5 in a row, Granabal area side, and they're all still there. So there is that small bit of a gulf there, but you've seen green shoots in Bruff, Cricora, and the Piercing to hope that that monopoly could be broken up soon. But on Newcastle and Granabal and Gary, Newcastle West have been the form team this year. There's no denying that.
There's an awful lot of similarities, Jack, with the senior hurling championship, because first of all, you have the same 4 teams in the Camogie semi-finals as you had last year, just as you had in the senior hurling championship. But also, you have 2 repeat semi-finals of 2020, just like you had in the hurling championship. Now, whether we'll get different results now is we got different results in both of the senior hurling championships, and of course the Camogie girls will be hoping that the same will carry through to the Camogie, but I'm not so sure without wanting to go into the predictions. Look, Newcastle West are very, very strong, Jack. There can be no doubt about it. Like if you look at the whole, if you look at the whole Newcastle West model, the structure of the club and the amount of work and effort that's going in at underage level, and has been going underage level for a number of years now in Newcastle West, and it is just beginning to pay dividends. Now, they reached the county final last year, and they just came up short. They were without Rebecca DeLee in the final. Karen O'Leary went off injured. So, like, when you look at the names on the respective teams, in Newcastle West, you're looking at Rebecca DeLee, you're looking at Karen O'Leary, you're looking at Roisin Ambrose, you're looking at Roisin Mann, you're looking at Debbie Murphy, you're looking at the Lee sisters, Yvonne and Grace, you're looking at Ella Whelan. Like the names just roll off. They are a very, very formidable, very formidable outfit. But Jack, they're facing the specialists. They're facing the championship specialists. Granabal and Gary. What a great tradition. A club that has done it at all levels, not just in Limerick, but at Munster and at All Ireland level. But you can't argue with them. You know, they have the boost of having Sarah Carey back among their ranks. They have the boost of Fiona Hickey and Limerick's 2014 All Ireland winning captain back, and I think Fiona is guarding the net at the moment. But you see that there is nothing that Granabal and Gary haven't achieved, and you know. When you talk about Limerick Camogie and when you talk about Limerick Club Camogie, like, it's one name that hits you straight on the face for what they have achieved and the tradition. Jack, Granabal and Gary never die easy in the championship. That is going to be a very intriguing semi-final.
Yeah, it will, and we also have a playoff in the senior. We won't look forward to it. It's just kind of complicated, but
only to say that we have a playoff, Jack, because they drew in the first round 6 points apiece.
Yeah. So,
and I think that game was in Cricora. So now the game is back in Bruff. So that probably tilts it in Bruff's favour. But just to give in to the mechanisms of what's happening, Bruff and Cricora are playing off for the right to play in a Piercing in the senior B final.
Yeah.
And before you get out the calculator or raid your Einstein brain, Jack, the loser of the playoff will play the loser of the B final in the relegation playoff.
So we could have Cricora and Bruff 3 times if the championship is over, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah, we're into slide rule territory almost, Jack.
Yeah, and like there's loads of plate finals and things on it. It's quite complicated at the moment, but We'll move on to intermediate. You have last year's beaten finalists Capmore will host Ballygrand at half 2, and you have Marubo are hosting Monaleen at half 11 in the intermediate championships. I suppose Capmore have been the team to watch in that championship. Obviously losing last year's final, you'd expect them to come through this and play one of Boher or Monaleen in the final.
I think I would, Jack. I think I would agree with you there. I saw them in last year's final. They were definitely unlucky, but Rough deserved to win on the day. But they're quite a good side, and I would be expecting them to come through, particularly seeing that they have home advantage against Ballygrand. But it's not a million years ago since Ballygrand were winning the senior championship. I think about 10 years ago or 11 years ago, when Saoirse Bulfin, actually, who's now taken up the role as coach with Westmeath and the former assistant to Davy Fitzgerald, he coached Ballygrand to win a county senior championship. They beat Killeedy in the final in Drumcolliher. The year escapes me at the moment, but it's a bit of a fall from grace from Ballygrand. But again, like Granabel, a great club, have won in All Ireland in the past. You know, have done great work for Camogie back there, and probably at times would probably be struggling, because you must remember they're kind of nesting in there between two giants of the game, Granabel in Limerick and Milford in Cork. So you know, it's fair credit to them, but I think beating Capamore on Sunday might be just a bridge too far.
Yeah, and Marubo and Monaleen.
Very, very hard to judge this one. You know, there's claims for both of them, Jack. I probably would go with Marubo.
Yeah, there are a lot of tight games. Then obviously you have the plate section. You have Killeedy versus Croke, Kilfinney and Rahena at half 2, and at the same time Templedanton host Newcastle West in the plate. Then in the Junior A, you have...
No, in the plate, Jack, I would be going for Croke, Kilfinney and Templedanton, because you must remember it's Killeedy's second team and it's Newcastle West's second team.
Yeah, but they've done well to get to that stage, well, to stay in the competition and have two teams, and obviously Killeedy had the 12-a-side team as well that beat Croke in the final. The Junior A Championships then, Galway host Patrickswell at half 2 in their semi-final, and Adair are home to Mungret St. Paul's. Galway and Adair won both their games in the group stages, so you have to fancy the sides that have a 100% record.
Yeah, I think I would go along with that. I would probably be fancying Adair more convincingly than I would Galway. Patrickswell may just put it up to him there. It's not as clear cut for me, but Adair would be clear cut, and of course you have. I think Adair will win, and of course you have the presence of Sophie O'Callaghan plus, of course, Caoimhe Costello, which
I think having Caoimhe Costello on the junior ranks would be enough to pull most teams through. So absolutely. Yeah, but again, there's a load of Camogie action to look forward to this weekend. I think in the junior you have the place between Blackrock Effin and Ballybrown at half 11 and Fedamore. We saw, obviously they lost their games, but it's a chance for a silverware at the end of the day. It
is, and it's for those two teams. It's equally, it's equally a big day. Both sides trying to make progress up the Camogie ladder, and doing an awful lot of good work for them. For Camogie in their respective areas, and look, it's very, very, very hard to call that one, Jack. But you know, probably Blackrock Effin.
Yeah. Well, look, best
excuse me being parochial.
Yeah. Well, you have to be. If you're not going to be, who is? Again, loads of Camogie action there. Go on the website, all the details. We'll move on quickly, Matt, because we still have a load to get through. The Junior A semi-finals, we have St. Pat's versus Caherline in Knocklong tomorrow night at 7:30, and then you have St. Kieran's versus Ballybrick and Bohermore. That's on in Clarina on Saturday at 3 o'clock. I suppose we probably wouldn't have predicted these four to be the final four. Each would have made their case to get there, but not favourites by any means. So start with Pats and Caherline. Obviously, St. Patrick's have the Hegarty brothers, which is a huge advantage at junior A level, but Caherline have shown throughout the year that they are building nicely for this semi-final.
Yeah, we're at a disadvantage in this, Jack, in that we haven't had the opportunity. I've had only the opportunity to see one junior A game, and that was a quarter-final between St. Kieran's, and we'll be talking about him in a minute, and Doon. But if you take an overview of the junior A championship, the first striking thing, the point that we made a couple of weeks ago, that you know, you'd be expecting. And we're talking about repeat semi-finals and teams reaching the semi-finals year after year. None of last year's 4 semi-finalists are featuring. Croke Kilfinney have gone on to better things from Bradford. Clahan and Patrickswell just didn't make it through the group stages. So I thought from the outset I fancied Castletown Ballygran. They have fallen by the wayside as well. They just didn't come out of the group stages. So now St. Patrick's were relegated last year, and the point you're making, Jack, is very valid. And you made the point in the context of Adair Junior Camogie with Sophie O'Callaghan and Caoimhe Costello on board. The same applies to the St. Patrick's Junior hurlers with the Hegarty brothers on board. Like, nobody needs to be told about what Gerard Hegarty brings to the table. But we can certainly say that one of the standout performers for Limerick in the 2021 under-20 hurling championship was Dermot Hegarty.
Yeah, very good.
Absolutely had a fine outing in the Munster final in Cork, and like if you've those two players leading the way, plus the fact that they have so many players now, practically all their team, who have experienced the bitterness of relegation and the heartbreak of relegation, but at the same time have the experience of playing at a higher level. I think it tilts it in the favour of St. Patrick's. Now, Damien Gillan is the manager over in Caherline. He's done a fantastic job over there. No question about it. And we know what Damien brings to the table. Patrick's Wellman, of course, the father of Jason and Anne, he's done a great job over there, and he will have them very well primed for this game. But is this in the predictions, Jack, or do we go to the predictions?
I'll hold your prediction there for a
okay.
minute, just for a minute. Obviously, St. Pat's came through Mungra 13-11, and Caherline would have beaten Ballybrown 2-19, 2-14, and to be fair, Ballybrown would have been favourites. So Caherline, as I said, they're primed for this semi-final. But moving on into Saturday's game, St. Kieran's versus Ballybrick and Bohermore. Ballybrick and Bohermore having juggling between football and hurling for a while now, like this year, so they'll be focused solely on this game. You saw Kieran's in action against Doon. Probably weren't expected to come through Doon, but did. It wasn't a classic by any means, but a win is a win in the quarter-final, and they know how to win St. Kieran's.
Well, I predicted that they would come through against Doon, Jack.
Oh, sorry, I didn't.
And I predicted they'd come through by 3 points. Do you not remember in our little chat?
I remember now.
Yeah.
It's all come back to me.
Yeah. But yeah, I saw him, and I can sum up St. Kieran's by saying that they're a side that are going to be very, very hard to beat. You know, they're like, you know, maybe we're overstating it, and maybe we're harping in too much on, you know, experiences against youthful exuberance and enthusiasm. But you know, they have players that were around when they last won the championship about 10 years ago and went through to the Munster final, when they were beaten by Kildare in the Munster final in Mallow. So, like, they certainly have a residue of experience. Now, we spoke earlier on about the quality that Newcastle West have in that that they had 2 teams involved in finals this weekend. Well, actually, it's a busy weekend for Ballybrick and Bohermore because their Junior B team are out as well in the Junior B semi-final. I think they're playing Adair.
I'll just get that. You know, I the Junior B when we talk about it, Ballybrick, yeah, in Kilmallock.
So, like they obviously have a serious pool of players, and of course they've been knocking around for a while. When it was coming through the divisional championships, and it's not a lifetime ago since they were playing at intermediate level, and they contested a county minor final last year. So look, there are a lot of positives surrounding Ballybrick and Bohermore, who certainly are a club on the up, Jack. Because like they were beaten in the Junior A football semi-final. I thought it was a surprise that they were beaten, if I'm honest. But yeah, it's delicately set up. But the one thing you would have to say about St. Kieran's, a very, very difficult side to beat.
Yeah,
we'll come to the predictions later.
Yeah, they're very difficult to beat in football or hurling at any age level. The Junior B Championships are finally into the knockout rounds, Matt, and we mentioned that we would get them when they got to the knockout stages. We'll start here with the hurling. We have the Piershig versus Bruff. Bruff for crown champions. Killian-Pallaskenry versus Blackrock. So, Bruff beat Blackrock in the final, if I'm right, Matt. Killian-Pallaskenry beating the Piershig. Those 2 games were on Saturday. The Piershig versus Bruff in Carrelli at 4:30, and Killian-Pallaskenry versus Blackrock in Fina at 2:00. Capmore playing Newcastle West. You'll see that's on until the 6th of November, so that's a while away yet. But Ballybrick and Moore, as you mentioned, are against Adair in Kilmallock. Just briefly on these games, Matt, because it's so hard to get to all these games. How do you see these ones going?
Yeah, it's difficult to know how they're going. I saw Blackrock and Bruff in the South final, Jack, and I was hugely impressed with both of them. It ended 112 to 110 in favour of Bruff. But what I was hugely impressed particularly about was the standard of play on offer. I thought it was a very, very good game. It was a good quality game, some very, very good hurling in it. And certainly it was the type of hurling that if you walked in and didn't know what game was on, you certainly, I don't think you'd conclude it was a Junior B game. You know, it seemed to be of a decent standard. But of course, quarterfinals are a different beast, a different animal of their own, take on a life of their own, like relegation finals and all this sort of thing. And it's very, very hard to benchmark one division against another division. But so much for the rant. I think that the 2 South teams, and I'm not being parochial here, will come through to the semi-finals. Yeah,
and obviously that Newcastle game being pushed back will delay it slightly, but we won't dwell too long. I'll just read out the fixtures again, just for anyone that's listening to this that doesn't have the visual in front of them. The Piershig versus Bruff on Saturday in Carrelli at 4:30. On the same day, Killian-Pallas play Blackrock in Fina at 2:00. On Sunday, Ballybrick and Bohermore play Adair in Kilmallock at 2 p.m. and Capmore versus Newcastle West is on next weekend in Kilbreedy at 2:00. I suppose moving from
if you're looking at what do I think on those 2, I actually think that the 2 West teams will come through. That will be one of each.
I'd agree with you to an extent, but I feel like Killian-Pallaskenry, just with momentum behind them, again, it'll probably depend on who plays the football tonight and who's around and things. But yeah, I go against there. I go with KP and 2 West Sides and Blackrock. But moving on from... if you ask me overall, I'd say watch Capamore. No, there's your area predictions if you can get that bookies at that. Moving from the hurling to the football. Again, we start tonight with Fedamore versus Granite Ballingarry in Kilbreedy at 8:15. Then on Saturday, there's a trio of games. Galbally versus Mungret in Bruff at 3:00. Groom versus Cahan in Fedamore at the same time, and Knockane versus Knockaderry in Kilfinnan at 3:30. Again, Matt, have you been lucky enough to get to any of these games, or just?
No, unfortunately, Jack. Only just reading about it and taking soundings about them. If I start at the bottom and work my way up, I would be going for Granabellangary and Knockaderry, from what I hear. Nacan were convincing winners over Fedamore in the East final. Granabellangary beat Knockaderry. No, it's not too long ago. Is it 3 years ago since 2019 actually? Bannog beat Nacan in the Junior B final, so they will obviously have learned from that. But they had a number of players at that stage who were from Carrick-on-Laois, and Carrick-on-Laois have subsequently fielded a team of their own, so that would have weakened them somewhat. But the West at this level, Jack, tends to be the stronger of the two divisions in West versus East. So I'm going for Granabellangary and Knockaderry. And as for the other two, Jack, I haven't a clue.
Yeah, I've seen Knockaderry play. That's the only game I've seen play against Palestine. They were decent, but I think Granabellangary are the side to beat overall. I haven't seen the other teams play, but I think Granabellangary are probably too good for the Junior B grade most years, Matt. You'd like to see them give the Junior A a rattle, especially with the Premier Junior there now. That is another grade to get up, but that remains to be seen. But we've 7 Junior B games to look forward to this weekend, and
I suppose the big thing to say about the Junior B, Jack, is, and you've just said it there, that we have them to look forward to. We didn't have them last year. We had no county Junior B championship, which was a pity. But we have it this year, and it's great because it's an important competition for an awful lot of clubs. Because you must remember, and when you're looking at those lists, all right, a lot of the teams there, Jack, are second teams, mainly second teams. But if you look at the like in Nacan and the like of Fedamore, for them it's their first team, and it's hugely important, absolutely hugely important.
Yeah, it's hugely important. Just every parish play is just there's always great camaraderie with the Junior B championship. There'll be a lot of players that are training with their first teams that just don't get a game, so they'll have been geared all year for that. So again, best of luck to all those teams.
Yeah, because basically it has evolved over the years to being nearly a competition for second teams. Because if you just put up the graphic there again of the 8 hurling clubs, they're all second squads, every last one of them. Of the 16 clubs involved now over the weekend, 14 of them are second squads, Jack.
Yeah, but no less important than the first squads. And
no, not one bit less important. And but I just like to make the point that it's hugely important for them all, but particularly important for Fedamore and Nacan.
Yeah. It is probably that bit more important as it's our first teams. But once again, the best look to all 16 teams in action. Well, 14 this weekend, and Newcastle West and Capmore next weekend. I suppose we'll move on to our predictions, Matt. We only had 3 games to look forward to last weekend. Well, we didn't have only 3 games. We only did the 3 games. That was the county hurling finals. A clean sweep from you. No result correctly guessed, but you got the 3 outcomes right. Kilmallock, Munger St. Paul's, and Effin, and I had Munger, I had Patrick's and Crow Kilfinney kind of to go against you more than anything. But I did kind of have a fancy for the well, but we were touching on it, Matt. The 3 teams won by huge margins, far more than we thought.
Yeah, we as we discussed yesterday on the podcast, we were expecting close games, and I suppose that dictated the margins that we were forecasting. So look, you can only predict from what you see. That can always something happen on the day that will upset anything. But I felt that as I felt last week about those three. I wasn't leaning towards the south. I was pretty confident of Mungret and Effin, and when I really analysed it, and when push came to shove, and I had a feeling that Kilmallock were going to get over the line. I thought they were in the best place.
Yeah, well, you were proved right last week. Let's see how well you do this week, Matt. Start with the senior final at Dare versus Newcastle West. You seem to lead in one way. You had to nail your colours to the match. Which way do you see it going, and why? I'm
going with Newcastle West by 3 points.
And is there any major reason for that?
Well, I feel that I saw them at their lowest, definitely in the first round. Saw them in the quarter-final. I saw the transformation that they had. Didn't see the semi-final, but had seen them playing Monaleen in the league final, which was immediately on the run into the championship. So it was a guide. They got over that, and I have a feeling that they're just peaking at the right time. And I think that Newcastle West haven't forgotten 2017 yet.
No, yeah, I think I'm going to go Newcastle by 4, because I think if it's very tight, Adair will have greater experience of winning these games. So I think Newcastle will win by more than one score. I kind of fancied them from the start of the year, but then again, it's very hard to write off Adair, and I wouldn't be surprised if they lifted it for a 4th time in 5 years. Moving on to the intermediate championship final tonight, Matt. Killian Palace Kenry versus Rackeel. The same again. By how much and why?
I'm going with Rackeel by 2. In that I've had the experience of seeing them, and they proved me wrong in the semi-final. I thought that their first half performance against Broadford was as comprehensive a performance as I have seen in any game this year. The level of dominance, Jack, it's just now the one caveat that I did put in when we were discussing it earlier was that I thought that they didn't reflect it fully on the scoreline, on the scoreboard, but they're patient, they're build up, they're good at holding the ball, which is very, very, very important when you come to the concluding stages of the championship. I'm going with Rackeel.
Yeah, I'm going to go with KP by 2. I don't know if it's more to go against you or from what I saw in the semi-final, but they definitely have the footballers to hurt you attacking end, and they've good defenders, but Rackeel have more experience. Again, could go either way. They're finally poised finals. The Premier Junior final, Newcastle West versus Father Casey's. I'm going to go with Newcastle West by 4. Obviously, Casey's won in the group stages, but Newcastle West, when you look at their semi-final result, and the players they have, it's hard to look past them.
Yeah, I'm going against you on this one. I'm going with Casey's. My thought process is not governed by when they met in the group stages, and Father Casey's won handsomely. That there is, as you pointed out earlier in the cast, there is an unseen factor there where Newcastle West lose the senior final on Friday evening. But that aside, I'm going for Father Casey's by 2.
Father Casey's by 2. The way I have it down, it's Newcastle West double. And then to finish off, Feeney Kilmeedy versus Camogie Rovers, Matt.
I'm going with Feeney Kilmeedy by 3.
Feeney Kilmeedy plus 3. I'm going to go with the West Side plus 2. I haven't seen him play football, but I saw him play hurling up close and personal, and a really strong physical side and good athletes. Just I feel like they'll have too much. Moving on to the hurling.
My rationale there, of course, is the generous sprinkling of players with senior experience and with Broadford. Yeah. And certainly, if they bring the Broadford football psyche and football mentality to the table, they'll be very, very, very hard to beat.
Very hard to beat is right. Moving into the hurling, into the Junior A Championship, we have St. Pat's versus Caherline. I'm going to go with a Pats win by 4. Again, we spoke about this game and that having a hurler of the year in the junior ranks is probably unfair.
Yeah, I'm going with Pats by 3.
By 3. But again, not clear cut by any means. Like the second semi-final, Ballybricken versus Bournemore versus St. Kieran's. Which way are you siding at that one?
Actually, I'm going with Ballybricken Bournemore.
By
3.
And that's from seeing St. Kieran's play. I suppose they probably limped off the line against Toon, where Ballybricken and Bournemore were excellent against Killeedy from what we've heard. But I'm going to go with St. Kieran's. I just think they're really, really hard to beat. And I think
I put in that caveat, Jack, that they're extremely difficult to beat, and I've said it from the outset. But I think Ballybricken Bournemore might just find a way around that.
Yeah. And then moving into the senior Camogie semi-finals, we'll just look at these two games. Start with a hand versus Killeedy. We spoke in depth about it. The defending champions to go through, or Ballingarry to get back to the final in the first time in 4 years.
I'm going with Killeedy by 4 against the hand.
Killeedy by 4. I'm going Killeedy by 3. Again, I think they'll just see it out. They obviously know how to win games. It's kind of like St. Kieran's. They just know how to win. And then Newcastle West versus Ballingarry, Matt.
I'm going with Newcastle West by 5.
Yeah, I'm going to go Newcastle West by 6. No disrespect to Ballingarry, I was wrong there. Ballingarry. Newcastle West firepower to return to some players that were missing last year. They have been the farm team. They just look the team to beat overall, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're the team to beat. And I suppose they put down a marker on day one with that huge win over a hand. They made a statement. They haven't been as convincing, possibly in the subsequent rounds. Now, I do know that a number of their players are juggling with ladies football as well, because there's a number of them involved with Old Mill. There's a number of them involved with Monaghan, and there's also a number of them were involved with Fiona Castlemahan, most notably Rebecca DeLee, but Fiona Castlemahan are out of the championship, but you've a crossover as well between
Killeedy
and Drum Bradford in ladies football. So busy times for some of those girls. Yeah,
a busy time for anyone that wants to get to all these games. I think we predicted 8 games there, Matt. There was also first 7 Junior B games. There's underage games. There's so much to look forward to this weekend.
We've the under 21 championship is up and running and going nicely.
Yeah, and look, it like the Junior B championship, the under 21 championship we'll get to once it gets to the knockout stages, because there's too much on to talk about, and you have to give the championships that started before that their respect and their due and their time, and that's what we're trying to do here. I think we'll leave it at that, Matt. I don't think we're missing between yesterday's podcast and today's. That's 2 hours of games to look back on and look forward to. So before you bring up something else that we've missed out,
let's throw in the ball now, Jack.
Yeah, exactly. So there's so many games to look forward to. You'll find all the details on the website in the coming days. Tonight we have the intermediate final. The senior final is Friday, and then you will host the semi-finals and finals throughout the weekend. So again, Matt, many thanks to you.
But Jack, I was just reflecting briefly before we came on, and I took a look at the Munster Club, the Munster GA website last night in the context of the Munster Clubs Championship. And full marks to Limerick GA, I say again, Jack. To see the list of clubs that are still involved in other counties, and there are so many involved in some counties that there were too many to put them up. But here we have Limerick with Mount Collins, Kilmallock, Mungret St. Paul's. We know 3 of our 6 representatives. We will know 5 of them come the end of play on tomorrow evening. Absolutely phenomenal. And this is a Limerick. This is a year in which Limerick were in the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Final.
Yeah. And they went all the way.
It's an absolutely fantastic achievement, Jack, and it has to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
And I hear people saying this, that, and the other thing. And there are things that I didn't like about it. And we said it. We didn't like the hurling and the senior hurling and senior football semi-finals on in the one day and all that sort of thing. You know, there are things that could be tweaked, but full marks that we're in the position that we're in. The coast is nearly clear for the Munster Club Championships. And you must remember as well, Jack, 2018, Limerick won the All-Ireland after 45 years. Like, they met the deadlines for every one of the Munster Club Championships.
Yeah, it's a credit.
Didn't default in one, and it's full marks for it.
Yeah, it's a credit to Limerick, Jay. And look, we're grateful for it because we have so many games to look forward to. And as you said, there's certain things you'd like to see all the games, but that just can't happen in a COVID year. But look, we're grateful for what we have. We have so many games to look forward to. Grateful for everyone for tuning in and commenting, etc. I hope everyone has an enjoyable weekend and get as many games as you want, and that your team will win the final. But for me, Matt, a huge thank you to you again, and we will be in touch soon, starting tonight, I suppose, in McNiven Park.
Yeah, you're welcome, Jack.
The impression again we get out with what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tommaso Sheahy, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word court today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there